All right, welcome. Today we're going to jump right into a really powerful idea, something that comes from the book, The Comeback You Didn't See Coming. We're going to explore that exact moment when all those subtle patterns running your life, well, they suddenly become impossible to ignore. This is all about the unavoidable weight of awakening.
Okay, let's start with this quote, because honestly, it just sets the stage perfectly. It really speaks to that specific turning point, right? That moment when the quiet, subconscious hum of our habits and our hang-ups suddenly becomes this deafening roar. This whole explainer, it's about that moment. The moment you finally see something that you can never, ever unsee.
So where does a journey like this even start? Well, it begins in a place that's probably super familiar to most of us. Just living on autopilot. This is that stage where we're just operating from a set of deeply ingrained behaviors, often without even realizing the quiet little ways we might be holding ourselves back.
And what's so wild is just how familiar these roles feel, right? We tell ourselves we're just being helpful or, easygoing. We become the reliable one, the peacemaker, that person who always bends so that other people don't have to. We basically learn to make our own needs totally negotiable. But what's so important here is to see these not just as personality traits, but as these deep-seated patterns of adaptation. And this right here is such a brilliant way to see that shift in perspective. What you've probably always called just being thoughtful or, oh, I'm just keeping the peace, this reframes it. It's actually a survival mechanism, one that probably served you really well at some point, but now it's been stretched way too far, and it's often at your own expense. So that brings us to the next stage, which is really the heart of this whole thing, the moment you can't unsee. This is the catalyst. It's the trigger. It's when a situation you've been in, maybe 100 times before, all of a sudden just hits you with this brand new, really uncomfortable clarity. And you know what? It doesn't have to be some huge, dramatic life event. The source points out it can be something tiny, almost insignificant. A friend makes some kind of offhand comment, and for whatever reason, this time it just stings in a way it never has before. You can't just brush it off. It just lingers. So you start replaying that moment over and over in your head. You start analyzing your own reaction. You're thinking, why did that bother me so much this time? And it's right there, in that simple question, that a new connection starts to spark in your mind.
And boom, there it is. That's the thunderclap of realization. This isn't just a one-off thing. This feeling, this pattern of making yourself smaller, of getting stung by something and just staying quiet, it's something you do all the time. The pattern is suddenly lit up in bright, flashing lights.
So, what happens after that flash of insight? Well, you have to deal with the aftermath. And this next part is all about the weight of your truth. It's about learning to grapple with the real cost, the cumulative cost, of all those small, seemingly harmless compromises you've been making for years.
And what's so crucial to get here is that this heavy feeling, it's not about blaming yourself. It's not about shame or thinking you've done something wrong. The pain actually comes from this profound realization that you've been fractured, that you've been living as two separate versions of yourself. And here's how that internal division breaks down. There's the part of you that's been awake all along, right? The part that knew something was off, that felt the sting of every single one of those compromises. And then there's the other part, the one that's just been trying to survive, just doing whatever it takes to get by, to keep the peace, and to stay safe.
And when you finally see this division, oh man, it unleashes this whole complicated flood of emotions. You might feel this deep sadness for the parts of yourself you silenced. You might feel anger for all the situations you tolerated. But you might also feel this strange, incredible sense of relief that you finally see it clearly. And of course, there's fear. Fear of what this new awareness actually means for your future. And you know what? All of it is valid. This is what the source material calls the very beginning of shadow work. And this is key. It's not about fixing anything just yet. It's not about creating some 10-step action plan. It is simply about sitting with the raw, unflinching awareness of your own truth, without looking away. Okay, I know this all sounds really heavy, and honestly, it is. But here's where the story starts to shift. We start to see how this weight isn't a dead end. We're moving on to how clarity is the first step, and how the very weight of this truth is what's going to ultimately lead you to freedom. The source really doesn't sugarcoat it, and I appreciate that. This new truth, it has a real, tangible weight to it. It is not easy to carry this new awareness around. It will make you uncomfortable. But the most important part, it is now absolutely unavoidable. And here we have maybe the most powerful reframe in this entire process. That heavy feeling, it isn't a punishment for not seeing things sooner. No, it's the total opposite. That weight is the feeling of clarity. It's the gravity of reality finally setting in, and that is a necessary, crucial first step.
So, what does this clarity actually do? Well, as you can see here, it basically creates a one-way path. Once you truly see the pattern, you can't unknow it. You can't just go back to ignoring it. You definitely can't go back to the comfort of autopilot. And that's the whole point, breaking that cycle. That is the very first step on the path toward real, actual freedom.
So, as we start to wrap this up, the focus is going to shift from just understanding the concept to actually applying it. The source leaves us with a set of really powerful questions to carry forward, to help anchor this awakening in your own life. Let's just sit with this for a second. If you're being completely, totally honest with yourself, what is the one truth about your life or your relationships, or maybe yourself, that you've just been quietly pushing to the side? Think about your day-to-day life. Where are those places you consistently make your own needs negotiable? Where do you find yourself bending over backwards just so that others can be a little more comfortable? This is about those frustratingly sticky patterns. The ones you might even be conscious of, but for some reason, they just keep showing up anyway. That recurring relationship issue, that self-critical thought that pops up. What is it for you? And finally, we have a heavier question, but it's one to really consider the stakes. If nothing changes, if you just keep going down this path of avoidance and compromise, what essential parts of yourself are you going to lose along the way before you finally decide it's time to reclaim them? So let's end with this final, really powerful thought. Look, the process, it can be tough, for sure. But seeing the truth, really seeing it, that's the beginning of your comeback. Because once you are truly awake, you can never fully go back to sleep. And that, right there, that is where your power begins.